Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is a US politics, global trade war video. Just going to do a short video on my initial thoughts on the threats from the incoming Trump administration to input tariffs on China. I think it's 10% on China, and interestingly 25% on the neighbors Mexico and Canada. The first thing to say about this, and I've said this in another video, is that the American economy is doing really, really well. All the metrics are looking exceptionally good for the US economy compared to comparable economies coming out the back of COVID, the pandemic, and the energy crisis and inflation that hit the world. And lots of people blame Biden in the US for inflation, but this was a thing that happened all around the world. Goodness me, you don't want to go to Argentina and Turkey at the moment and compare inflation there. Or maybe you do, because you'll understand that the US is doing pretty well. But even against G7 countries, the US has got a really good handle on inflation, and the metric, it's done that whilst growing the economy incredibly with record-breaking stock market postings, etc., etc. Okay, so the American economy is doing really well. As I've said before, don't fix what ain't broke. So if you are an incoming administration, I'd be looking at the economy going, do you know what? Like, people are going to be judging us on the economy. And if we can just take this and then tinker a little bit and claim it was ours, claim that, which has happened before, that happened in 2016 on the back of Obama's economy, then Trump could take that economy on and go, yeah, brilliant. Look how amazing we are. Look, the economy's doing really well. Aren't we brilliant? Even though it is arguably Biden's infrastructure bill, Inflation Reduction Act, Chips and Science Act, and so bill, and so on and so forth. Okay. What he's doing instead is threatening everyone with tariffs. Now, tariffs are across the board. Tariffs are inflationary, and I shouldn't need to explain this to you again. You put tariffs on imports. It is your electorate, your citizens that are going to be paying for that. Your consumers are going to be paying for those tariffs. It is a form of taxing your own consumer. The Mexicans aren't going to be paying, the Canadians aren't going to be paying, the Chinese aren't going to be paying, unless they are paying in a more abstract sense by not being able to sell as much to the US, because people will look for look for substitutes for all that good. But essentially, if people are going to buy those goods, then they're going to buy them at inflated costs, because the importers are going to put the price up. And so a Chinese mobile phone is going to go from $500 to $550. Okay, and that's because you put a 10% tariff on that good coming in, and your consumer is going to pay that. Or the importer is going to sink that cost and not make as much profit, and therefore not be able to reinvest. And either way, it hurts the US economy more than the Chinese economy. Although the long-term idea is that you stop buying Chinese stuff and you make stuff yourself. But that's a really long-term thing. You aren't suddenly going to be able to have alternatives that are manufactured in the US for all Chinese goods, right? And so across the board, tariffs are problematic. There's nothing wrong a priori with tariffs. Strategic tariffs are fairly sensible. Like, you can protect certain industries, but across the board tariffs are really problematic. Now, you can imagine you can build up a case that putting tariffs on Chinese goods fits in with a worldview that the incoming Trump administration has, which is China bad, tariffs on Chinese goods good. China are our adversary. Right, this idea that are they a competitor? Are they a member of the global community with us, or are they an adversary? And it's looking more and more like China is being seen as an adversary. And so therefore you can understand tariffs to some degree. I'd still disagree with that, because you're going to have a trade war that is... A trade war will cost consumers. It's just, it's that simple. Like, if you want to put inflation on your consumers, you may achieve certain other things with the trade war, but it will cost the consumer. And if you've had an electorate that's just voted out one government because they saw them as not having a good handle on inflation, even though actually comparatively they did have a good handle, But if you're voting them out partially on inflation, then voting in a government that are going to raise inflation with a trade war is just insanity. But anyway, yeah, trade wars do not have happy endings, right? Okay, so it's looking like there's going to be a trade war, but you can kind of understand it with China. I'm not saying you can justify it, but you can sort of explain why the Trump administration would have done that. But to do that with your allies and neighbours is nuts. And what they're going to do is put 25% tariffs on all Mexican and Canadian goods and kind of attach it to the idea of illegal immigrants and fentanyl, even though that's really playing fast and loose with the facts in terms of, you know, how fentanyl gets to the US, who are the people responsible for that, how much is actually Americans within America being responsible for this, but trying to put all the blame elsewhere. I don't know. It's quite simplistic. Anyway. That aside, let's look at it from a purely kind of economic point of view, and a political point of view. Now, some people on my threads was some real pro-Trump people on my threads are saying, "Oh, it's already worked. Great move by Trump," and you're like, "It's already worked." No. So Mexico. So what happened is Trump came out with a statement that seemed to be like, I had just a really great call with the Mexican premier, and you know she's already doing X, Y, and Z. And then literally a couple of hours later, she brought out the letter she sent to Trump, which completely went against what Trump had claimed. So Mexico will retaliate if the US moves ahead with Trump's tariff plans, says the president. Mexican government says the move could kill 400,000 US jobs. Okay, now whether that happens or not to that degree, I don't know, but it's not going to be good, right? There is an awful lot of stuff that goes each way on that border. It is going to hurt both countries. Then you've got Canada. Don't play games you can't win. Gas analyst warns Trump will lose miserably on tariffs. Okay, well, rattled by tariff threat, Canada at the moment, there's all sorts of accusations going around, but you have got a very strong response from Canada, arguably. Trump tariff shock sparks all hands response in Trudeau war room. This is how a couple of weeks ago, Canada was a great ally of the US. Everything's going fine. Free trade. It's all good. Yep. Bish bash bosh. You're our mate. Yep. You're our mate. Awesome. Let's be friends. And then suddenly, there's a war room starting up. So this comes from Jagmeet Singh, the NDP leader up there, saying the only thing a bully responds to is strength. So people are seeing the US in terms of being the bully, right? We have been spending 2.5 years on this channel absolutely excoriating Putin for being the bully in a conventional war sense, literally going to another country and invading it. This is a form of bullying. This is economic bullying, or trying to get certain things out of a neighbour by going really far up the escalatory ladder right away. I'm going to explain this in an analogy in a minute that will see Doris get hurt again. Poor old Doris. So, as Singh said, the only thing a bully responds to is strength. Singh said the Prime Minister should fight like hell and called on the government to establish a war room. The Prime Minister seemed unpersuaded, though. I don't think the idea of going to war with the United States is what anyone wants, Trudeau responded. Trudeau said that while his government would stand up for Canadians, it would do so seriously and methodically without freaking out like the leader of the NDP seems to be. But the point being that there are people within Canada within the Canadian political sphere who are freaking out, right? And Canada will have to answer in some way, and they're not going to roll over and have their tummy tickled here. This will start a trade war of some variety with Canada. So my analogy is this, right? If I'm a neighbour, right? I'm the US here. Right? I'm a neighbour of Doris there and whoever next door, right? And I look over to Doris and say, "Oh God, her tree's growing over my fence, and it's really annoying me. Oh, I need to sort that out. It's becoming more and more annoying. There are more and more branches coming over into my property. I need to go around and sort it out." So I go around, I ring on Doris's doorbell. She opens the door and I say, "Your tree is growing over my fence," and I punch her full in the face. I bonk her on the nose, I break her jaw, she falls to the ground. Doris is in a heap, in excruciating pain. I'm like, right, so Well, that's what happens, you know, if due to the fact that you've got a tree growing over here. I am hitting you very hard in the face. And if you don't change that, then I'm going to keep hitting you. The idea should be that if I have a problem with Doris's tree, I go round to Doris's house and say, Doris, can we sit down and have a cup of tea? Right, she's pretty worried about that. Can you sort that out, please? And that'd be really great, because actually it's really annoying. It's causing a bit of harm to my garden. I'm not getting sunlight. Okay, and if she doesn't sort that out, I go around again a few weeks later or whenever and say, look, you haven't sorted that out, Doris. I'm getting pretty a little bit annoyed now. And we're friends. The thing is, we're friends. So I'm sure you can sort that out. Please do so, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't get sorted out. Then they say, look, Doris, look, I know we're friends, but I'm going to have to call the council, because that is so on and so forth. You move up the escalatory ladder, and hopefully at some point that does get sorted by Doris, because it's in both our best interests that gets sorted, etc., etc. What Trump has done is he's gone straight to the top. He's just walked around and he's either threatened to or will basically punch Doris in the face. And that is completely unnecessary, because Doris is just a friendly neighbour. And the same on the other side of the house as well. And you're thinking, these are the people that you want to get on most with in the world, because these are your immediate neighbours. And yet you're starting a trade war before you've even got into power. And I just get a sense that this is insane geopolitics. At a time when we need global unity against your real adversaries, you need to be leveraging these people, but I think with slightly different ways. You can get. I'm not saying you can't end up with across the board tariffs, but try out these other things first, because now you've really peed off Mexico and you've really peed off Canada, and now the whole world is looking at the US going, God, they're already being pretty dickish. And he's not even in charge. And then Europe's getting worried and then doing contingency plans. Then you've got UK thinking, oh my God, we're not in Europe. Are we going to do well out of not being in Europe? Or are we going to get screwed over even more because we don't have the safety net of being within a group of countries as a trading bloc? These are worrying times without throwing, without throwing fuel onto the fire here. But it seems to be that's the way that Trump likes to do things, and he's very transactional. So, and this is entirely transactional, isn't it? It's like, it's not a case of we can work together for a greater good. So it's not the cooperative form of action and working in alliances is to go round to my neighbours and say, look, guys, let's bring it round. Let's get together. Right, we've got some issues with. I won't go down the analogy route, but from America's point of view, we've got some issues with immigration. We've got some issues with fentanyl and stuff coming across the border. And by the way, Mexico can say, yeah, and we've got some issues with guns coming across the border, by the way. So it isn't like a one-way thing. Okay, we've all got issues. How can we work together to stop this? And if we don't work together to stop this, then this is the roadmap of where it's going to end up. And down here, we've got tariffs. And if you guys don't want tariffs, we need to sort this out. So you can threaten, and this may be just a threat, but he's saying on day one, this is going to be happening. And he talked about this before when it wasn't so much a threat. He's only started recently to connect it to fentanyl and immigration and stuff. But before, it wasn't connected to that. So don't think for a moment that this is Trump just doing X, Y, and Z, because that wasn't his intention. He loves tariffs. Tariffs are the most beautiful word to him. He's told you that. He's told you that time and time again. He wants to do tariffs because he sees everything so transactionally like that, rather than in terms of alliances. He should be getting together with Canada and Mexico and thinking in terms of a bloc. I mean, that was what the UMSC was, the kind of the replacement to NAFTA. It's like free trade blocks so that we all benefit. It's a positive sum game rather than if you benefit, we do badly. So you can't, it's the idea is that I can't have you doing well at all. So therefore, I'm going to put tariffs on you, and that means that we'll do well. And that's how he sees tariffs, which is this complete zero-sum game. approach to the world. He doesn't work well with alliances, but do you know what? International politics is about working with people, not always against people. And I think that's a fundamental flaw of Trump, is he looks around the world and he thinks you are all competitors. And you are all competitors that I need to screw over, because if I don't screw you over, you'll screw me over. And your gain is my loss. So I have to make it that it's your loss first, and that'll be my gain. Except when it comes to a trade war, that doesn't work. If you put tariffs on them, you are not punishing them, you're punishing yourselves. In fact, you're punishing both countries, because it becomes a tariff trade war. And you can try and defend Trump as much as you like. And if he doesn't end up putting any tariffs on and achieves what he wants now, then okay, fair enough, I'll stand corrected. But I'm not really standing corrected, because that wasn't the initial, I think, position. I think those around him have maybe molded that to be the position, and it might accidentally end up being beneficial to the US by flexing. But Trump is desperate for tariffs. He loves a tariff. He just doesn't really understand them when they're across the board tariffs. But hopefully there are enough big boys around him in big boy pants and big girl pants who can show him the light. But I don't know, the whole positioning, the posturing of the incoming Trump administration, I think, is fundamentally flawed, and it is this zero-sum game approach of going up the escalatory ladder far too quickly. And people don't like that, and it's essentially bullying behavior. Like, we don't like people like that in our lives. We don't like our neighbours to be like that. And yet somehow, I said this before, like we teach our children not to lie and not to be like this, and yet we seem to want to vote people in who are exactly like we teach our children not to be. So it's almost like I give our political leaders permission to be complete bastards, but I wouldn't like anyone in my life that was like that. And we have this weird situation where, like, yeah, you know, I wouldn't like anyone like this, but actually Trump going around bullying is fine by me. Bullies are okay if I benefit from the bullying. And but the problem is that actually the Americans won't benefit from that bullying, and that is the issue here. And you know, and as I've said, we look at Russia's bullying behavior and we find that utterly unacceptable. And I think this is another form of unacceptable economic bullying, where you've got economic war and people talking about war rooms. I don't know that this is going to be good for the US economy, and part of me thinks, good. Do you know what? Trump and his team and the electorate and the people that voted him need to learn that. But then on the other hand, I think, no, I don't want the American economy to hit the rocks, because that will affect people's livelihoods. People lose jobs and so on and so forth. So, you know, that's where I stand on it, which is, I'm not quite sure. But I do worry about these really knee-jerk populist policies that appeal to Trump particularly, and some of his most fervent supporters, but I just don't think they are beneficial for the US in the short or long term. Anyway, take care, guys, and I'll speak to you soon.